My dad went to prison when I was 5 years old. Our family was impacted. It doesn't just impact the person that's incarcerated. It impacts the whole village.
So you have to tell your dad at some point that, hey, this is the decision I want to keep my little girl. How does he react?
My stepmom said, Kelley has something to say. And I said, no, I don't. I didn't want, I was so young and scared. I was like, no, I don't want to. And so then she kind of said, you know, Kelley, I think has decided to have the baby. And I said, well, I want to. I don't want to have an abortion. The kitchen table flipped. All the food off, just, yeah.
Like a Real Housewives of New Jersey moment.
Oh, yeah.
How did becoming a mother at such a young age shape who you are today?
You know, it made my life a lot more difficult, but it also, I think, saved my life in a lot of ways.
On this episode, I'll be interviewing Kelley Ferris, born and raised in California and who is currently married to a former MLB player who is now a professional baseball coach of the Seattle Mariners organization. In this episode, we will take a deep dive into the details surrounding how Kelley found out she was unexpectedly pregnant at only 15 years old and how she overcame countless challenges to create a stable, loving life for her daughter. From navigating complex family dynamics, her father's incarceration, and the pressure of teenage motherhood to finding her strength, her community, and eventually her husband, her story is one of hope and perseverance. Buckle up. This is going to be an episode you do not want to miss. If you're listening for the first time, Unplanned and Untold is a completely donor-funded podcast. You can leave a tax-deductible donation through the link in our show notes if you believe that no student mom should face an unplanned pregnancy alone. You can also leave a 5-star review for free if you love the show. Please welcome Kelley Ferris to Unplanned and Untold. So welcome to the podcast, Kelley. It's so nice to officially virtually meet you.
You too.
Yes. So to give the listeners some background information, Kelley's husband is a professional baseball coach, and my sister is married to a professional baseball player. And I guess you and Kelley met when? Last season?
Last season in Vegas.
Okay. Wow.
And just love at first sight. Just another beautiful bond. Yeah. And just, we hit it off, really.
She's
instantly.
The best.
She really is. She really is so easy and just, she's amazing.
She was telling me about you and she showed me your picture and I'm like, oh, dang, this girl is beautiful. And you like her as a friend. I'm like, I don't know about this girl. And then she's telling me about your unplanned pregnancy journey. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I love this girl. We've been through so many similar situations. Yeah. And I was like, I need to have this girl on my podcast. She has a lot to share. Yeah. So I'm just super excited. We're going to dive right on in. A common thread that I hear when interviewing women who've had unplanned pregnancies is sometimes the way they're raised can be a little bit shaky. How can you relate to that aspect?
You know, I grew up, I want to say that I had a great life and a good childhood. But of course, everybody has a story. And I did grow up with not as much stability as a lot of people. My dad went to prison when I was 5 years old. So I was raised in a single mother home. And she was working and going to school full time and trying to survive. So that kind of trickled into, to my life. It was kind of just constantly, it wasn't until recently that I feel like I don't have to try and survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have 5 brothers. Wow. Only girl.
The only girl.
They could only handle one of me. That's what they say.
I believe it because, I have 4 boys and 1 girl. And I'm like, if I had that girl first, we would not have had 5 children.
Girls are a lot. Girls are a lot. They're a lot.
Oh, my goodness. And then where did you grow up? What state?
So I grew up in California, born and raised in California. I grew up in Davis, California, small little town, college town. Nothing to do but get into trouble. Hence to why I got pregnant.
Your father going to prison when you were younger, I mean, that must have impacted you greatly. How do you feel like that experience influenced your future relationships?
I constantly was looking for love and a man's attention, a boy's attention. prison is, our system is, that's a whole other podcast.
Yes, that is a whole other podcast.
That I am very passionate about.
Same.
So our system is so corrupt, and it's, people always say it's broken. Well, it never worked. And unfortunately I've been, our family was impacted. It doesn't just impact the person that's incarcerated. It impacts the whole village. So,
absolutely.
you know, my mom was just trying to survive.
She was doing the best she could.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So going back to how you got pregnant, a lot of the women I interview on this podcast are women who find out they're pregnant while they're in college. But your story goes back a little earlier, finding out you were pregnant at 15. Take us to that moment. Where were you? What were you feeling? I mean, that had to be so overwhelming. You were so young.
You know, I think because I was so young, it was a blessing. In a way, I was naive and had no idea the, you know, how big it was and how it really was going to change my life. And I was friends with a girl that wanted to go to a clinic in Davis. I grew up in Davis, moved to Sacramento because my real mom left when I was 14 and moved to Washington State. Wow. And so I moved in with my dad. But I would go and visit my friends in Davis every once in a while. And I ended up going with her. She wanted to get tested because we were young, wild, and free. Yep. And I was like, you know what? I'll go and I'll get tested too. And we're at the clinic, and in walks the doctor and the nurse. And they're like, so, you know, you're pregnant. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I didn't even think I could get pregnant. I was, you know, 15 years old. I just turned 15. I just turned 15. So I was like, wait, what? And, you know, I was like, they gave me pamphlets, like, you know, these are the options that you have. You can have, you know, either give up for adoption, you can have an abortion, or you can keep it. And here's some pamphlets for you to go home and figure it out. And I went and met up with like two of my other best friends, and we all just talked. And my first instinct was to not have it, to not. Okay. And I went home. I ended up emailing my mom at like 1:00 in the morning. And just because at this time, my mom and I's relationship was kind of not very good. I was very resentful that she left. I was living with a man that I really didn't know, my dad. You know, just kind of moved from, I was middle of my freshman year, moved to Sacramento, left all I knew. So I was very bitter and resentful. And, but I emailed her and I said, you know, I'm pregnant. And she wrote back and said, I called her and said, I want you to read the email. And I was on the phone with her when she read it. And she's pregnant at this point, by the way.
Your mom was pregnant.
My mom was pregnant. Wow. Jerry Springer. Okay. But we're not, but like, it sounds like it. Okay.
Right. No,
so, she just, you know, was very like, okay, like, it's going to be okay. You need to tell your dad. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not telling my dad. I didn't know him. I wasn't comfortable with him. And then she, ended up telling him. She ended up calling him at work the next day. And then my dad came home from work, and he's like, I was so scared. And because my brother Josh told me that my dad knew. And my dad came in and he said, well, what were you doing 3 months ago? And kind of just made light of it. And then said, you know, let's get you in for, you know, an appointment to have an abortion. And so my stepmom actually took me. And I went, and I remember leaving, and my stepmom, you know, picked me up, and she drove to a parking lot, and she stopped the car, and she looked at me, and she said, and my stepmom was 20 years younger than my dad. And of course we all have issues with stepmoms, right? But I look back at it now, and she really is a wonderful person, and she was doing the best she could. Right.
Yes.
And this is something I'm forever grateful for her, is she looked at me and she said, you know, we will support you in whatever decision you make. whether you want to have her or not. It's your decision. And I remember, being like, okay. And I went back to talk to my friend Haley about it. And I just was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to have an abortion. I really don't. And told her dad, and her dad was very like supportive. Like, I'll support you and do what you want to do. But yeah, telling my dad was not good. He was not happy
that's
about
a
that.
lot at such a young age. I mean, I can't even imagine. I'd never been to an abortion clinic before, but I have interviewed a few women who have, and it always seems like such a scary place. Can you walk us through your experience at the abortion clinic and the pivotal moment when you decided this is not what I want to do?
I think it was, there was no like really just like aha moment. I think it was just realizing that I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to have the abortion, that I did have other options. But I do think that if my stepmom, I think her, vocalizing that it's okay, that they're going to support me, even though my dad really didn't until later. My mom being supportive. My mom really wanted me to have my daughter. Like she really felt, and I look back at that now and I think it's also, I was wild and trouble a little bit, looking for a man's attention, and my daughter probably in ways saved me. So yeah, I think my mom knew that I needed my daughter. So I think it was just a lot of different moments that kind of made the decision. But the clinic was scary. Oh my goodness. Like they have you sit in front of a computer and watch a video of what, you're going to go through. And I was further along because I was 15 and I didn't even realize like, oh, I didn't have my period this month. I'm so young.
Sure.
So I was already almost 3 months when I found out. So I would have to go through a 2-day procedure where they would have to actually do. And I was like, I can't. Like, no.
Once they had unpacked all the details, you were like, this is not what I was thinking.
Yeah. I thought I was like, going to be way earlier. And no, I was I was almost 3 months. So.
Wow. So you have to tell your dad at some point that, hey, this is the decision. I want to keep my little girl. How does he react? Because at this point, he kind of was pushing you to check out all your options and consider abortion.
So I finally talked to my stepmom again and told her that I wanted to have the baby. And my stepmom said, okay, let's sit down and have dinner with your dad, and you're going to have to tell him. And
oof.
Yeah. And my 2 brothers, Josh and Robbie, my 2 older brothers, and my brother Josh's best friend, Mike Liver, who was like another brother, they were there. And I told my dad, my stepmom said, Kelley has something to say. And I said, no, I don't. I didn't want, I was so young and scared. I was like, no, I don't want to. And so then she kind of said, Kelley, I think has decided to have the baby. And my dad said, why? Your life is going to be so much harder. And, my daughter is half Mexican. So there's, he was trying to say, you're going to have to deal with the, a mixed race baby. You're going to have to deal with, just why are you going
to being a young mom?
Yeah. Why are you going to do that to yourself? And, and I said, well, I want to, I don't want to have an abortion. And the kitchen table flipped all the food off. Just,
like a Real Housewives of New Jersey moment.
Oh yeah. It was crazy. And then I left for a couple of days and went and stayed with my best friend Haley's family. And just kind of, and then my dad called me and said, it's time for you to come home. And kind of, he needed a couple days probably to process it all. And
I mean, it's scary. I think when in the moment we think this is my life and this affects me, but it really does. It affects a lot of people.
Everybody.
Absolutely. And it affects your future in a way. So talk to us about, what does high school look like now that you're pregnant? Are you even showing at this point yet?
So I think I found out I was pregnant in, I want to say like end of freshman year. So it was like almost summertime. And then the next year I went to independent study. And like, 2 weeks before I had Natalie, they asked me, I went in, I said, I'm going to need some, work for the next like 6 weeks because I'm going to be at home, with my baby. And my teacher was like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm pregnant. And he was like, no, you're not. I'm like, yeah, I'm due in like 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
I was so tiny, I was 15. So I was like, I gained no weight. Like I was just all babies, and I just used to wear big hoodies and yeah. And so, yeah.
So did they let you finish out that semester? Is that how you finished school?
So then I finished. No. So then I did that for my sophomore year.
Okay.
And then my junior year, I went to a continuation school. It was like on an actual campus, a high school campus. But it's for pregnant and parenting teen moms and dads. Actually, there were some dads there too. And it was wonderful. Like the support, I graduated like 6 months early, cause they really just try to get you finished so you can like continue your life. They had pregnant, parenting classes where, you had to take those. My daughter was on campus with me. So I could go and breastfeed during, breaks, or if she was crying, I could go check on her. It was wonderful. They unfortunately shut it down because, budget, they can't afford that. But, yeah, that school was, and every single teacher and counselor, everybody there just really cared about everybody. And
they
really
wanted you to succeed.
They wanted us to succeed, and really were incredible people, all of them. Wow. So, yeah.
What a school. I mean, I have never heard of such a thing. And
it was
I know
amazing.
it doesn't exist anymore,
No,
but
unfortunately,
that really must have impacted you being able to take responsibility, start growing up, but still stay and finish high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wouldn't have been able to. I mean, I used to take the bus to school with her and.
With your daughter?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So like in a carrier on a school bus?
Yeah.
Oh my word.
They'd pick me up every day from the house. Just.
That is wild. I mean, for those of us who've never heard of something like this, I am just mind blown listening to this. I mean, it's awesome. It really is awesome because it gave you that opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
They set you up. They set you up for success. They really did.
Wow. That's such a beautiful thing. And take our listeners back to the father of your daughter. Where did y'all stand at this point as you finish high school?
Together. So we were together off and on for, I want to say about 7-8 years.
Wow.
He great person, great man, great father. We're still, friends. I would still, he was invited, him and his girlfriend were invited to my wedding. Family. Yes. We've known each other since we were, 14 years old. So, but we had of course, young love and real life. I mean, he graduated high school and worked full time. He worked like 2 jobs, did construction, and he went to school full time. Wow. His story is, talk about my story. His story is incredible. He came from very, very bad life, horrible life. And, he's now a financial analyst for CalSTRS and just doing really great things. So, yeah.
That is wild. So when he was in school and you were with the baby, what was that dynamic like? I mean, at that point, y'all were still together, but were you able to attend college like he was?
No, because they didn't have they didn't have the resources for childcare. So I kind of was put on the back burner. It was, and just, he was a great dad, but of course, selfish. Most men are, especially when they're 18 years old. So, it was kind of just his life was more important in ways, his college and all of that. So I just, I worked and, I tried to enroll into school a few times, but it was, no childcare. So it would end up having to drop classes so, yeah.
So it looked totally different from you and your experience.
Oh, yeah. Totally different.
What support system did you have in place at that time? I know you kind of mentioned you have multiple kinds of mothers.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
So my biological mom, my real mom, she left when I was 14. And when I had my daughter, I have an oldest brother, Robbie. His name is Robbie. And he is my dad's first. And his ex-wife, you'll hear me talk about her. Her name's Mimi. So it's my dad's first wife. And Robbie, my brother Robbie's mom. And she invited us over one night they would always do Sunday dinners, just him and his mom. And she invited me over with my daughter, and to do a Sunday dinner. And then pretty soon it was like every Sunday. And then pretty soon it was like stay the night. And then pretty soon that is Natalie's grandma. That is like, I'll never forget sitting at the kitchen table and, I felt like I was a young mom. I was living with my dad at the time, and my dad was like still probably a little bitter that I had my daughter. And so they wanted me, like, even if I had the stomach flu or if I was tired, like they didn't help me because they wanted me to, you wanted this is your responsibility. We're not, so I felt like I never really got a break.
Right.
And so I'll never forget, we're sitting at the table and Natalie was in her bouncy chair. She was probably 3 months old, and she started crying. And I went to get up from dinner and Mimi said, "Oh, no. Give me that baby." And I remember like wanting to cry, like, oh my God, like somebody like is helping me. Like, and my oldest brother, Robbie, was incredible. Uh-oh.
Right. But it's different. It's different when a mother figure that you don't expect and you're not necessarily looking for steps into that place that you kind of wish that your biological mother would have stepped in.
Yeah.
So how did your relationship with your biological mother progress over the years?
So my biological mom is incredible, and she has had a rough life. She's not had it easy, but, I've forgiven her. I love her for what she's done and what she could do. She did the best she could, like we all are. And so that's something that, I've really been working on the past couple years is the relationship with her.
I want to shift our conversation for a second to your daughter. How old is she now?
She's 20 and she'll be 21 in January. And she's so excited about it.
Oh my gosh. So talk to us about your fears, if you have had any, of her experiencing an unplanned pregnancy like yourself.
I had her get on birth control when she was 15. And I didn't, I didn't, say she had to, but it was definitely something that I was like, very like, hey, like, let's talk about this. And she's, she was very responsible and set it up, and she went to the doctor's appointment, and, her doctor put it in, it was in her arm. She did the birth control, I can't remember what it's called. And the doctor did it. And she said, I love that your mom's here. And I was like, well, yeah, of course.
Yes. And take our listeners back to how you meet your husband and how he kind of gets engrafted into this family picture with your daughter.
So how I met him? Mm-hmm. Oh, good old Chargan's. It's like a hometown bar. Okay. And, he actually was mutual friends with a lot of people that I knew. So like friends of friends. And he, so we just never ran into each other because he's gone.
Okay.
Because he played professionally as well. So he played professionally for a long time. So we just never, he was gone 7 months out of the year.
Right.
And we met and it was like instant sparks, and we dated for a full year. And then finally, like it's funny because all my friends were like, he doesn't really like you. He's just not that into you. And
my gosh.
I know. And then sure enough, when I got engaged, all those friends called me. Oh my God, you guys are getting married. I'm like, yeah, I told you. He liked me.
He really liked me.
Yeah.
And what was his opinion and acceptance on your daughter?
You know, Eric is the best. He's such an incredible person. He's a coach. So he's a very positive person. He's very smart and just motivating. And so I think, I was kind of his first girlfriend. Like his whole family, I was the first girl that his mom and sisters met.
Wow.
He played.
No pressure, Kelley.
No pressure, right. And they're incredible too. His sisters are just strong women. But I think he kind of took it, like I was his first girlfriend, so he was learning how to even be a boyfriend.
Right.
And then, so he kind of just did the same thing with being a male figure in my daughter's life. But he's never really acted like a dad towards her because her dad's so involved.
Right.
Their relationship, but now a little bit more so, like he worries more and like
Absolutely.
is constantly making sure, if she's home for break, she'll stay the night. And if she goes out with friends, he's constantly, the next morning, where's Natalie Murray? Like, just wanting to make, so he has those, he's starting to be more stepdad-like.
Yes, that makes sense. So looking back, how did becoming a mother at such a young age shape who you are today?
It made my life a lot more difficult, but it also, I think, saved my life in a lot of ways. It was hard. It was hard. It was really hard, but wouldn't change it,
Right.
And now I think about my daughter and how successful and well she's doing and what she brings to the world and her light, she was really meant to be here. So
yes. Do you feel like society could do a better job supporting young mothers?
Absolutely.
How so? How do you see, if you had a future in mind for how our society could step up and support women in unplanned pregnancies, what would that look like to you?
I think helping more with affordable childcare. I think even for mothers with husbands, families, I don't think there's, my sister-in-law right now is going to school full time and working full time. And she, is like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my tuition this year. And because all of their money goes to childcare. So I think that is really something that we need to figure out. And just, not more support, more like no judgment. I think there's a lot of judgment.
Absolutely. So if you could go back in time to 15-year-old Kelley finding out she's pregnant by herself in a doctor's office, and you could talk to her, what would you say?
It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out.
Absolutely. It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yes.
It really does.
Well, Kelley, thank you for being so brave and sharing your unplanned pregnancy journey with us. And I hope this episode reaches the right people and that your vulnerability will inspire others to see that it's going to be all right, that it will help break down that stigma and create a sense of hope for those walking in a similar journey. So thank you for your honesty, for your strength, for your transparency, and just for joining us today.
Well, thanks for doing this podcast. I'm so glad somebody's out there, really trying to help women better their lives. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And for all of our listeners, we hope to have you back for our next episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye-bye. Unplanned and Untold drops new episodes every other Wednesday. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a 5-star review if you love this episode. I'm Caitlin Willing, and this is Unplanned and Untold.